Hello and welcome back, and that's right, it's time for another Reolink camera review. I think this is maybe the fourth or fifth Reolink camera review I've done in 2022, and although in the start of all of my reviews I only ever really looked at cameras that were NAS compatible, over the year or so, I've kind of softened my rule on that, largely because of all the camera brands that I've spoken about. Reolink are the ones that seem to be innovating just a little bit more than everyone else, and a lot of that innovation in that hardware that they're bringing out, unfortunately, is on systems like the Argus series that are not compatible with network attached storage devices. So in order to really talk about them more and really get into them and talk about some of these cameras, I've had to soften that rule. Now, the Argus family of devices is one that, to my knowledge, has had maybe three, technically four different generations since it was first introduced. I think in 2016 or 17, and in that time we've seen a lot more improvements in not only efficiency, which is going to be incredibly important as you'll find out later on, but also in just how much output there is on these cameras. And in the case of this one, the Argus PT, which is knocking around for about 110 to 120 NICA, depending on where you are with tax and local currency exchange, and that is a pan tilt battery powered camera that is an outdoor camera designed for homes and businesses that can also be powered via a solar panel. This is Reolink's own solar panel, knocks around for about 30 NICA, but again, regularly on offer. You can get them in a bundle. Normally it knocks about 10 to 15 quid off the solar panel there. And it's worth bearing in mind, of course, that that solar panel does not store its own power. It merely passes the power through over USB or high power USB into the camera and its own internal 6,000 milliamp power bank inside. To put that into perspective, this is the Google 6 Pro. This has got a 5,000 milliamp battery inside there. So it's only fractionally larger than that of a mobile phone, but it has to be said, thanks to that efficiency, that power lasts for an exceedingly long time. And although you can power it via a simple USB input at all times, 24/7, that solar panel does not require much in terms of natural light on any given day to power that battery up quite well. So again, getting them together, I'm surprised it's not included, or if this camera had an inbuilt solar panel, because although it can be used indoors, it's got outdoors written all over it. That external pan tilt zoom design, but we'll get into that later on. Now, the camera itself, it's a 4 megapixel camera quality there that can go up to 2K, so not 4K, but definitely higher than 1080p there at the very least, up to a total 15 frames per second, which isn't going to sound like a vast amount, but again, think of that keyword there, efficiency. Before we go any further, in terms of the hardware specifications, let's unbox the device. I'm sorry, the lighting in this studio does not like the whiteness on this packaging. You're going to find that out later on in the video, and try as I might, it's getting real tough to show this off. There is a full review, hopefully live now, linked in the description over on NAS Compares. And if we open this up, there's that "Be Prepared for Reolink" written there on the box. I've mentioned this in other videos. I find that weirdly threatening. I don't know why. We've also got the book here that just got all of the information, the warranty information, first time setup, stickers, wall guides, that sort of thing to put it up. Again, you've got those security stickers if you want them. I'm personally not that fussed. You've also got the warranty information, 2 years of manufacturer's warranty, and first time installation manual there. Very detailed, multilingual, etc, etc. So if we move that over there, we can have a look at our first things. Now, straight away, we've got our wireless antenna here. This is, again, a camera that is powered via Wi-Fi, because obviously if it's an outdoors camera, it's designed to be wireless because of the battery operation. That shouldn't come as a huge surprise there. Now, you've got the base model that goes in. This is where you mount it on the wall. It's mounted like so, with the camera sitting on top, or with the camera on top or underneath. It's up to you. It's securely mounted. You've got USB cable for charging, but again, I'd go solar panel, and most solar panels include their own USB camera. I will highlight that the connection on this camera is USB micro, so it's not USB Type C, but again, we won't go too harsh on that. We've got the band here, this strap, which I've since learned is if you want to mount these cameras on like trees or natural stuff you don't want to drill into, that's what that is for. Also screws and raw plugs for wall mounting. And finally, the camera itself, which looks like a larger version. Let's get rid of that plastic there. It looks like a larger version of the old C1 and C2 Pros. It's a bigger, wider base there, and a lot of that is to do with that large base battery that's put inside there. Now, I mentioned earlier on about this being the Argus PT. PT not for that PS4 demo of that horror game. Again, if you've got that reference, thank you. But it's because this camera is technically not PTZ. It has pan, it has tilt, pan and it has tilt, but it doesn't have optical zoom. It has digital zoom up to 16 times, but that means it doesn't quite clarify as a pan tilt zoom camera there. Now, the recording pattern of this, if you do use it in 2K at 15 frames, is HEVC, highly efficient video codec, or H.265, again, which is native to the app, and again, it will do a lot of that transcoding to the mobile app, and you're utilizing it there. As mentioned, the digital zoom is times 16 in terms of its zoom quality there, but because it's a digital zoom, you kind of lose any real fidelity after about times 6, so I wouldn't use that too much. What's really intriguing is, much like a lot of modern releases, despite this camera being a battery operated one and therefore power efficiency is king 24/7, it does have audio in and out. So it has a microphone built into the top, but it's also got a speaker there built into the front to output either a loud siren or to allow you to speak out. So if it's someone that's there and there's an alert or something, or you want to say to someone, get out of my house, or etc., you can use that speaker to output directly from the mobile phone there, as well as that either using triggered alerts and to notify that big siren, which you can adjust the volume manually, or you can manually action that siren if you choose to. Now, on the front, there are 6 trackable LEDs, IR sensors built into the front, as well as 2 LEDs for lighting that provide a degree of night vision, as well as a 230 lumen night light up to 10 meters as well. The sensor inside doesn't just take advantage of standard motion detection, it's got PIR, passive infrared, which means it also utilizes those IR sensors to allow heat registration. Very small, just very, very small notification, but it's enough in terms of that tracking that you'll get fewer false alerts from things like leaves or whatever passing in front of the lens. This, again, will understand the difference of the kind of radiation and the infrared heat that comes off most living things. So again, very useful for lowering those false alerts there. One thing I will say, remember the camera is going to be mounted like that, is the camera is IP64 weatherproof, so it's a couple of degrees less than the likes of the Duo and 1 degree less than the Argus 3 Pro. And I think a lot of that is simply because of the pan tilt zoom. There has to be an element of ingress to have that kind of motion there. Again, it's hanging upside down, which is going to be good because it stops a lot of that moisture getting directly in there. And remember, it will be covered by that clip there, but still, nonetheless, it's a shame that the weatherproofing is a little lower than I would have liked. Angle of view is 120 degrees, with the PIR sensor being 100 degrees of coverage. Wirelessly, it supports both. It's a dual band, so 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. But the big kick in the bum for some users is going to be that it's not NAS supported. None of the Argus series have. I've never quite understood why, but I'll get into that in a second, because it does support Reolink's own cloud services, which is quite good. It also has a little clip here, if we remove the back, to allow us to connect that power supply there with a rubberized covered panel there, as well as for our wireless antenna to be attached there if we choose to, very easily. So again, we've got that wireless connection there. And finally, at the bottom, we've got room for the power and the SD card slot as well. I stand corrected. The SD card slot, of course, is located here. If you move the lens down, you can see a rubberized cover there where our SD card goes inside. So again, you have the option of localized recording on an SD card, supporting up to 128 gig on this camera, that you can utilize on this device to store many photos and video recording, either 24/7 with a rotational recording pattern of your choosing and retention policies, or just alerts as different triggers are broken on this device, from movement to more. Now, with that, via the mobile app, you can access all of those recordings remotely. There's lots of different features there, from color night vision enabling on this, all the way through to fast time lapse. You can view recordings very quickly, or just alerts. Or you can utilize Reolink's own cloud services, where you can use the basic account, which is free cloud storage with 7 days of alerts stored for one camera. Bear in mind, again, that's not 24/7 recording, that's just the alerts in small access denominations of 5 seconds, I think, or 15. Again, double check, but that scales up to, I think, there's £6 or £7 package, which allows you to have, I think, 10 to 15 cameras, a month of retention, improvements in the time-lapse policies, basically that much per month for all of your alerts to be accessible via the apps and the desktop client apps. But it's those users that go for a camera like this because they want to connect it with their network attached storage devices who are going to be disappointed, because this device can't connect with QVR Pro or Surveillance Station. It can't be, from what I understand, be connected via an FTP server either. Now, going back to my earlier point, I'm really disappointed about that, and I've said this before about the Argus series, and I've never quite understood why. Because I don't believe there's a technical reason, unless Reolink want to tell me, why this camera, utilizing their software that's incredibly comparable to a number of their different cameras that I've talked about in the past, can be accessed via ONVIF or ONVIF on a NAS and an FTP server, but can be utilized by their own software. And some cameras can and some can't. So if someone knows why, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, hopefully Reolink will let me know. But that's enough talking about the hardware on this device. Let's get over to the software side of things and have a little look and see how this camera does once we set it up with the solar panel, take a good look how it performs. Okay then, so we've made our way onto the desktop of my mobile here. Let's open up that Reolink app, and immediately you just heard a little notification ping showing that one of my cameras has indeed clocked that I am in motion. If we scroll the way down, we can have a look there at the Argus pan tilt there at the bottom, and here I am sat just a few meters away from the camera, and as you can tell, for some reason I've thought it best to sit in one of the shadiest spots I could find. It's just plain bad luck. But as you can see there, that is the display we can see on screen. Now, I am going to have to rotate the screen in a little while just to give you some idea what that's going to look like. I can go ahead and enable that to get the full screen, but of course, what you're going to see there on screen is the wrong way up because of the way that these things are displayed on YouTube. But immediately, some of the features and services we can see here while I'm on screen. Let's check the delay. So I'm going to go ahead and wave now. So we've got around about a 1 second delay there on the camera. Now, the features you've got available to you, first and foremost, you can take a localized snapshot if you so choose. So again, not relying too much on the camera itself. You can, if you wish. If you do get a notification, as you can see, if I pull the screen down there, you can see that notifications are being clocked there on my phone. If you get a notification, you can log into the camera directly and take a localized snapshot of someone immediately, as well as, if you choose, click the record button. I'll wave my hand in the air there, and then when I stop clicking record, it's now saved a local copy of a video file to my phone, not just the camera. Now, the camera itself that I'm running here, I'm running the low res image there, but I could have scaled up to the 2K 4 megabits per second resolution there, but just because of all of the recording I'm doing, I'm going to keep it at this moderately low res, and as you can see, my phone has then identified this new recording there. So from here, there's a few options of things we can do. Now, first and foremost, we've got that talk option on the bottom left. So if I click that there, it opens up the ability to take care of that audio in-out that I mentioned earlier on. I'm recording this outside, so there will be some background noise. Hopefully you'll be able to pick this up on the mic, but I'll give it a try now. And we'll get this loaded in. Testing. Again, hopefully you pick that up. There's a distance of around 2.5 to 3 meters between me and the camera. And again, you can alter that recording there. If you choose, you can scale it up, scale it down. I'm going to be a bit limited on that because of recorded feedback. Another thing you can do is search for a specific clip if you want. So you can effectively scan the timeline of different areas if you choose and zoom in and out. And it will take that slightly abridged version of it, which if we track sideways, we're able to get ourselves in shot just a little bit there. And we can come out of that little clipped recording mode if we choose, if we just want to have a focus on a preset area. So again, you can zoom in and out quite easily on that. So if we wanted to zoom just behind me, and then what we can do from there is then once again take our localized recordings and more if we so choose. Coming out of that mode, we can go into the pan tilt mode of this, and again, unfortunately, because of the way things record, it's going to be the wrong way up for you there. So to put it into perspective, now I'll be able to take control of that pan tilt zoom where I can rotate the camera live, but of course this is going to be in portrait mode while I'm doing it there. So again, you've got that control. Actually, let's bring that back just to show you something a moment. As you can see, I've wired up there the solar panel next to this camera using barely any of that length of cabling that's included, but it's around about 3 to 5 meters there. Let's let that stop on that spot. And again, you've got pan and tilt. We can go quite high up. That's the highest angle we can go for. We can bring that back down a little bit, all the way to the ground level. So again, we've got a decent amount of control there as far as pan and tilt is. With zoom, we can literally just grab the screen and go into our zoom functionality if we choose, and that's really it. When it comes to playback, what you can do is, if depending on the recording patterns that you've selected for this camera, so in my case I've gone for simple alerts, and it's doing capture of alerts as and when they happen, and if I choose to, I can just go straight into a recording and it will load one of these recording patterns. That's me making my way towards the table there for the recording. And again, you can come out of that or switch towards back to the live view if you choose at absolutely any time. Once again, waving my hand just to prove that that's the live view. And once again, as you can see from the bottom of the screen, the cameras have started noticing. I've got another camera just for another video coming up soon, just in the background there. Over here in the background, that's the Argus 3 Pro that we'll be featuring later on. And again, we can flick between high fidelity and low fidelity modes if we choose to increase that picture quality. But as you can see, when we're loading up the new stream, it will make a difference on how you're connecting with the camera. And I've intentionally lowered my bandwidth consumption here to make sure that I get all the alerts and the features running through. So that may be something that we may have to leave for another video, and I will be at the end of this video showing you some of the night vision modes on this. Now, if we choose to, we can enable the alarm. I'm not going to do that because I don't hate my neighbours, but take my word for it, it is ridiculously loud. What we can also do is make our way into the settings and the individual camera, and as you can see, you can monitor that battery life at any time directly from this user interface. And as you can see, because it's connected to that solar panel, we can see that it is effectively using it productively to charge itself. Then we've got the network settings that we've enabled there in the background, and we can change to any other available Wi-Fi modes as we see fit. The display, as you can see, we can change in a number of ways, from increasing or decreasing the frequency. We can up that brightness if we choose to make sure I'm more visible, as you can see there. And we can lower that down. I'm going to leave it as default because otherwise it will ruin it for our night vision modes. But again, it's nice to have that kind of area of control at a moment's notice. We can add or remove that camera name, and indeed that goes to the logo and the watermarks if we choose, if we want to make sure. And of course, if we're concerned with areas of coverage that we don't want recorded 24/7, so for example this window here, I can create a privacy blanket there which will now cover that area of the recording, so no matter what happens, that area of the screen will no longer be recorded. So again, I can remove that at any time, which is what I'm doing there. And as you've seen from a pop-up there earlier on, all the time while we're doing this, the notifications are still working. And as you can see, it is going to use that PIR mode to identify people movement, which is what those alerts are, and movement of the background there. A PIR will not notice these leaves moving here. Understand via radiation that that isn't going to trigger the camera. It's not a real alert there, it's just natural movement. As you can see, everything from changing the sensitivity of that PIR motion all the way down to how you want notifications to be received, and if you have areas that you specifically want to ignore or highlight, you can add all of those there as you need. It's a very adaptable user interface via the application, and although it does annoy me that it's not supported by network attached storage devices or even FTP support, it's still great that you've got this level of control and manipulation of the camera remotely very, very easily from the user interface. And again, if you choose to, you can share the camera with someone, or alternatively you can go ahead and create a quick time lapse to enable to see minutes, hours, weeks or days of footage very, very easily there. So again, lots of options, all of which are available immediately there for you, all of which can be configured on the fly without powering the device down or removing the ability to have those recordings. So what I'm going to do now is fast forward a bit to when it gets dark, just to show you some of the night vision of this camera before we wrap up this review. Okay, so here we are utilizing that night mode that I just mentioned there. As you can see, we've got the same viewpoint there all the way through, and although if we zoom in nice and close, you can see me there. If I wave at the camera, we're able to see there that full night mode there. Even though this camera doesn't have that light built into it there, and a mistake I made earlier in the recording, it still has quite a tremendous area of effect as far as the light that is visible there. Indeed, to put that into a little bit of perspective, what I can do is move away from the camera and give you some idea about how dark it is that is being viewed for this camera. So if I move out of the field of view and just go into camera mode, that is how dark the area of effect that we're talking about is in terms of this camera's utilization. Ignore those blue lights, that's coming from my recording laptop. But again, despite that, we still have all of the controls that we've previously talked about. All of that pan, tilt, zoom control there, and those LEDs still managing, even in pitch black darkness at 10:30 PM here in the UK, or 9:30 depending on British summertime, etc., that we're still able to utilize the full feature of this camera and have all of that view. Now, if I had to complain about one of the things that isn't available on this camera that makes me really, really sad, it is that lack of a light on the camera. I mentioned in the earlier recording that this camera had a light on board, but sadly that is not true. And to put that into perspective, if we looked at the Argus Pro 3 and flick over to another camera that we've set up for another review, we can see here that this camera has much the same setup as what we've talked about. And if we zoom in very, very far, we're able to see the camera there. That is the camera that we're utilizing for the primary of this review. But this camera, of course, has an inbuilt light function. So we can enable that light, which enables you to use that color recording. And once again, there is the camera there in the background that we were utilizing for the other feature. And that's really the main thing that I would argue let down the Argus PT. It's a great camera at a great price, good frame rate, good tech, and the battery pack and the solar panel for such a small amount of money is a no-brainer. But the lack of an onboard light does mean that you can't really take advantage of features such as the color mode there, because that's, if you flick to the color mode, that is just how little light there is on show available there. Now we could flick to a higher resolution. Alternatively, we could go into the camera settings, go into the display and heighten the brightness, but even then that's really not showing us much to be going on with there. And ultimately, that is the one thing that lets this camera down, that lack of an onboard light, despite what I said earlier in the recording. But apart from that, I thoroughly recommend the Argus PT. And with its support of those localized recordings, as well as support of the company's cloud services, it's really hard not to be able to recommend this camera generally. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video. There should be a review linked in the description. Click like if you've enjoyed the video. It helps me know what I'm doing right and wrong. And click subscribe to learn more. Apart from that, I will see you next time.